I had one of the most creative, expressive experiences recently, and that is a friend of mine, one of my the best sister friends. She called me up, and her and her sister are going out, and they're going out to this location. And by the way, the location was top tier. We were there to take sneakers. And we were there to paint and decorate our own sneakers. It was a marvelous experience in terms of coming up with this creation. And the reason why it was marvelous was not just the end product of having the shoe, it would be the sisterhood that was formed when we were there and the conversation. I'm like, okay, this is something different. Listen, this is Anne Marie, host of About This Life. On About This Life, we take a look at some of the challenges in our life. We take a look at some of the circumstances that surround us, and we want to be able to create, we want to make a different point of view in terms of the lens we look through life. We want to change our mindsets. We want to let go of some limiting beliefs, and we want to be able to design the life that we want to live. We want to get to a place of thriving. So it is my pleasure, it is my honor to welcome Dr. Afia to today's show. Hello, Dr. Afia.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. And I have to say, I am in awe of you. So I kind of want to sit back and absorb all you have to share because I just absolutely know this is going to be phenomenal. The reason I know it's going to be phenomenal is because when I read, listened, heard about your journey, and where you are now in terms of content creation, content creator. I was like, oh my goodness, this is spectacular. This is different. This is not your normal traditional course of action. So, content travel abroad is one of the things that you do. Social media audits is another thing that you do. Tell us about your content creator life.
Oh,
Just let's jump in.
oh my goodness. So let me see. This was something that I never envisioned for myself. I started my career as an English teacher. I taught 11th grade. My students actually encouraged me to go to graduate school because I love talking about Black history. I developed curriculum, and I'm like, we're going to read books about the Black experience written by Black people. And so they encouraged me to go to graduate school and get my PhD in African American Studies and Africology, which is what I did.
Wow.
And
Africology?
yes,
Wow.
yes, the study of Black people and the Black experience. So it was such an incredible journey, and I've always loved teaching. I knew that, that was my passion. It's what I had been doing, and I really enjoyed being a Black Studies professor. However, I did not like research. I hated research. After I wrote my dissertation, I said, oh no, baby, this is not for me. I just want to teach. And so I started off at a teaching school and, thought that might be a good route for me. But during the pandemic,
Mhm.
oh, it was right after I finished grad school. So I had been, already locked down, and then now we're locked down again now that I'm finally free. And so I was just working, working, working nonstop. I saved up my money and I heard about this thing called an adult gap year. And I said, I want to try that. I've been working at
Mm.
least two jobs since I was 16. I know you know about hard work and how that can just really wear at your soul.
I do, but I want to pause before we go into
Okay.
this
Okay.
notion of adult gap year. Because first of all, I never knew that I could do such a thing because maybe I'm
And
ready for it too, being in the education field. But I want our audience to understand the difficulty of teaching during the pandemic because I want the audience to feel the pain. Because imagine that you're on a computer and most of the students is it's black boxes that you're talking to.
yes.
You hope somebody's listening. You say more about what that was like before you go on.
It was so challenging, and I was also doing work in DEI, and so really looking at acutely how the pandemic was affecting the Black and Brown community and other marginalized groups, and so trying to hold space for these students, but also having a rough time myself. And so since I wasn't going outside, I had like two teaching positions, a consulting gig, a part-time community teaching. So I'm just, sort of piling on the work, but it was so, so draining. It definitely was. And as an extrovert, I was really feeling that lack of human connection and really missing that sense of community. And so, yeah, it was definitely an extraordinary experience. And there were many things that I learned through that time period as well. But following that is when I said, you know what? I need to step away. I need to take some time off. And so, I decided to take my gap year and I never went back. And so
Okay.
I'm here
How do
now.
you take a gap year? Asking for a friend.
Yes. So there are actually a lot of people online that talk about this. I didn't really have any sort of like a formal plan or anything. I just knew that I had a decent savings account and that I could live for a year off of that. And so, I just decided to go and to travel. My plan was to get into consulting after I was finished, maybe look for another job, but I wasn't really sure if I
Right.
wanted to do that. And so I traveled. I've been traveling my entire life. And but now I had the opportunity and the time and the freedom to record and to share more. So
Oh
all throughout
my.
my dissertation process, I traveled to maybe 20, 30 countries, and I
Oh
was
my
learning
goodness.
about the Black travel movement. So I was learning, how to travel and, how to make it more accessible for our community and writing about that. And people would say, you should be a blogger. You should share more about this. And I'm like, I'm writing a dissertation, y'all. I don't have time to be a blogger. But at this point, I had time. So I started sharing my journey. I started sharing the places I was going and the things that I was doing. And folks, it just really resonated with my audience and with my community, and it began to grow, and people began to invite me. I started sharing the Black businesses that I was supporting. So then businesses started inviting me out to come.
Okay, so you giving me a lot, Dr. Afia.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, let me
We need a
pause.
pause
Let me
because I'm
pause.
following this journey. First of all, the Bible say you should not covet or be jealous, but hey, I'm listening to your life story, and I'm like, okay. There is so much richness that you're giving because you're giving some options to educators out there who are listening as well. But it is no easy feat to go to 20 to 30 countries. And so for those of us who are listening to you tell about your experience, you traveled alone, you traveled in groups, you curated where you wanted to be and you explored the diaspora. I think of Zora Neale Hurston, for example, when she used to collect the stories.
Yes.
To pick up and go, to follow that dream, what activated you? You're working on your dissertation, is what I'm hearing, and now you had the time because you had the savings already. And how did you select a country? How,
So, my travel journey started with a study abroad in Ghana that I did during my master's program. And I went over
Mhm.
there for a semester, and it was life changing. And it also made me realize that this was something I could do by myself. At that point, they walked us through the process the first time, but now I was like, I'm smart, I got it. So where am I going next? And that's what started my journey. As I said, I was working on a degree in Black studies, so I've always been interested in the African diaspora. So I traveled anywhere that Black people were, all throughout the
Mhm.
Caribbean, all throughout the continent of Africa. I've been to 9 countries on the continent, a total of 43 countries now.
Wow.
And I just became very passionate about wanting other people to realize that travel was accessible to them too. Because so many of us think that it's too expensive, I don't have time, I don't have anyone to go with, and all of those things are easy to navigate around.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. I hope our audience is listening because you just listed all the barriers: time, money, don't want to be by myself. Those are all the barriers that we put up to it. So you get into content creators. So what is it that you do as a service now? How do you help people?
So, in a variety of ways, one of the main things that I do is highlighting and amplifying Black-owned businesses. My channel focuses a lot on food, fun, and travel, of course. So,
Mhm.
I go around to different businesses, I travel, I share my experiences, I let people know where they can go and support a Black-owned grocery store, new Black-owned restaurants that are opening up, sharing my experiences traveling throughout Ghana. I also host group trips. So I currently have a trip coming up to Bali in September and one to Ghana in December that I'm very, very excited about.
Okay.
But I do all of these things to just sort of bring people in and create community and allow us to support each other and to connect.
Well, tell us about, before I go on to the next segment or the next series of questions, tell us a little bit about the Bali and Ghana trip at this point. Are they more like retreats? Are they more like just experiential in terms of immerse yourself in the culture? What is a flavor in if somebody signs up?
So that's a great question because there's actually different flavors for each of those trips. The Bali trip is one that is centered around rest. The theme for that trip is finding joy, centering rest, and building community. So this is a time you know what's going on right now in this country.
Yes.
It is a heavy, heavy time, especially for our community. And so I really wanted to create an intentional space for folks to connect with each other, to get away and to just recharge their spirit. So that's what we'll be doing in Bali. There we have a few tours. There's massages, spa days, a little food tour on a motorbike, and rest. The Ghana trip is different. So for that trip, we are digging deep into culture. It is
Mm,
connecting the past, the present, and the future. So we will be going to Elmina, where the slave dungeons are,
yes.
communing with the ancestors, seeing the door of no return that our ancestors left through, and having
Hmm.
that experience of being able to come back. We'll be working with the community and getting to
Wow.
interact with local Ghanaians. They're some of the most beautiful and kind people I know. And we'll also be attending an Afrofuture music festival, and so getting a little bit of, sort of all of these things together into one trip. And of course, I'll be sharing a little bit of my background with the history. Kwame Nkrumah, the president of Ghana, was the
Yes.
first to take their independence from colonial powers. So we're just going to be soaking in all of that goodness.
And I'm glad to hear that. I've actually traveled to Dakar, Senegal.
I love it there.
Yes, so it has its door of no return. So I actually walked through. It comes through a mansion, and you pass through the mansion. Something interesting that I didn't know, because I used to think if I wore the cowrie shells, I was being cultural and I was being represented who I am. Come to find out from that experience, that was a colonial thing in terms of how many shells that the enslaved people wore, and that was how they bought and sold. And I was like, oh my goodness. So we have appropriated it and changed its meaning here in the US, in the Americas, from that experience. How do you choose which one?
So one of the things that I did during the time that I was really heavily traveling was that I was open. And that's one of the things that I share with people and that I recommend if you want to travel and you want to get out there, be open to different destinations. And so I chose based on the price. I got into some travel groups. I figured out how to find travel deals. I figured out how to utilize points and miles with travel credit cards in order to travel for less. So when I saw a deal, I had a list of countries that, I was interested in. And whenever I saw anything on that list, that's where I was going. So I was able to travel to South Africa for $500 round trip. I was able to visit Martinique in the Caribbean for $200 round trip. So those were, that was sort of how I went about selecting the places that I was traveling to.
So so what I'm hearing you say is that you're willing to do that legwork for those people who want to experience this, that you would work with, as part of your service, anybody who wants to join you on this trip, you will do that.
Oh, so I don't do that part of the research. I more so share tips around how folks can do that. What
Mhm.
I provide is the hosted experience. So if people want to join a group trip, which is another great way to travel. So when we're talking about those barriers, one of the things is I don't have anybody to travel with. And also people have a lack of experience. Like I don't even know how to put this together or if I need a visa or how to organize all my tours. So this way it eliminates that barrier. It's all done for you. We walk you through the process. You're joining a group, so you can come by yourself. You can bring
Mhm.
your friend, whatever you want to do. You have that already set in place for you and just kind of makes that more accessible and easier for everyone.
I see the teacher in you because I'm thinking teach the teacher. Because if you teach me how to do it, then I can be able to go outside of my comfort zone and go on these, curate my own experience and live outside of the fear, which is letting go that limiting belief that I'm afraid to do this. Why not go outside our comfort zone and experience life the way it should be? Is that what you mean by living authentically? Because that is definitely a word that as you describe yourself and what you do, you live authentically and you want that for others. How do you define authentic?
Absolutely. I think that for all of us, it's something that it's a process to discover. My
Mm.
authentic self and who I am today is not who I was 10 years ago, not who I was 5 years ago.
Yes, amen.
Yes. So I think just encouraging people to live fuller lives, to lean into new experiences, to just let go of that fear, to be able to educate themselves, to get in community with others that can, teach them and share things, and then go after those experiences, see what you like and see what you don't, and then continue on the path of those things that you enjoy and those things that ignite your passions. And so that's really for me how I've been able to even figure out who is my authentic self and
Mhm.
how do I live in that.
You've mentioned community several times,
Mhm.
and there's differences in the community you form through an experience, such as the ones you host, through online, such as your past experience being an educator. Why is community important in terms of who we are? And if you can bring in a little bit about the African American experience, the brown and black, because in this country we focus on individualism.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a paradigm shift when we think about community is where you grow and become healthy. So I want to bring your PhD all in
Yes.
into
So
the
there's
conversation. Come
layers
on,
to
educate
that.
us, teach us, take us
Uh,
to school.
I recently spoke at a conference, and the panel that I was on was titled "Community as Currency" and
Mm,
"Connected as Currency," and not in a monetary sense, not in a sense of what can I get out of this, but in a sense of this is what is providing worth and value, and this is how you truly have those rich experiences by building those connections and connecting with that community. So on a higher level, that's why community is important. Particular
Hmm.
to the Black experience, we know, as you mentioned, that individualism is a tenet of the Western world, and that's what we're socialized into. But our ancestors, our our original worldview is one that is based and steeped in community and unity, in uplifting the collective. And so being able to study those two different worldviews and realizing that, this one isn't better than another one, but I need to find the one that resonates with me. And so we know that as a Black community,
Hmm.
that is what has allowed us to survive, and not only to survive, but to thrive. And so, we talk about resilience and we talk about all of these things. And during Black History Month, we're highlighting these different people and representatives that have done wonderful and amazing things. But the true magic of our experience lies in our community and lies in the collective. And so that's one of the things that I am amazed that I get to witness and experience every day, because when I'm sharing things online and when I'm, highlighting and amplifying these businesses, the response from the community is absolutely what sets my platform apart. And one of the reasons why I've been
Hmm.
able to generate over $1 million in extra revenue for Black businesses.
Amen. Amen. It sounds like you're the living, breathing green book. Tell
Love it. I love it. Yes, I will take that.
our listeners what the green book is.
So the Green Book was developed by a mailman, actually, in the Jim Crow era, and I read about this in my dissertation. So in the early stages of the Black travel movement, the motor car was essential because this gave us freedom. It allowed us to move in ways that we had not been able to move before. However, there were a lot of restrictions due to segregation and racism and things like that. So the Green Book was developed as a guide for Black travelers to let them know what places were safe. So for each city, there would be a list of businesses, Black businesses, or other businesses that were open and allied with the Black community, where they could safely stop for gas. They could
Yes.
get food without fear of reprisal or lynching, and just, really be able, and so this ushered in the first time that the Black community was able to enjoy leisure travel. And so for me, that's huge. And I love seeing how we're still doing that work today.
And I love it. And I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, because these are conversations that look like I have two adult sons. And as a mama, you always worry about your child, no matter how old they are. And we live in a day and time with a news cycle.
Mhm.
It's very alarming,
Yeah.
alarming to us, especially in the Black and Brown community.
Mhm.
And so, how do you connect with people when you're afraid? Not because you're paranoid, but because there's real fear and you have been with trauma. How do you connect with people because maybe you live far away from your family?
Mhm.
These are issues that we deal with and handle. And so, what you just described is the way that we get together. My kitty cat is down here trying to get my attention. Like,
Oh.
don't jump up on me. I'm looking at him. He's like, where are you? So, I want to thank you for continuing that work. I want to get back to your content for a moment. Discuss it like a piece of content that impact your audience. Maybe if you can focus a little bit on like the social media aspect of things, because you've described in great detail the travel aspect and the experience, but in terms of social media, because there are so many bloggers out there, podcasters out there, there are so many people who are transitioning and exploring this for themselves. So, in what ways, or give us just one experience where you've had an impact on someone you've worked with?
Wow. So there have really been so many.
Hmm.
I am one of the few content creators that focuses specifically on amplifying Black-owned businesses. And so that's huge in an industry right now where Black-owned businesses are facing so many barriers to success through access to funding, through support, through just all of these different avenues. So one particular business that I worked with was a new seafood restaurant. And so she had just opened up. She had reached out to me before she even opened. Like she was very excited and had worked with a few other content creators before and had some really successful, pieces of content go out. But I told her, I said, you know what, my community is something special, and I really want, to be able to work with you and to see this. So I dropped the video, and within a few days, it hadn't even picked up traction yet. She called me and said, I just beat my sales record. I
Amen.
just blew it out the water. She called me the next day and said, we broke it again. She was busy for 2 months straight. Her staff knew to come in, to eat before you come in, go to the bathroom before you come in, because they were absolutely packed. And so that's one of the things that I love being able to do for businesses that, need that boost. There was another business I worked with that was actually facing harassment. She had just moved into downtown, our center city, Philadelphia, which is a very affluent white area. And the folks that lived in the condos above her building did not want her there. And so they began flooding her basement. They
Oh my
began leaving
gosh.
rodents outside of her
Mhm.
door. They were making nasty comments. So I said, listen, I know that she was struggling. She didn't know what to do. She's like, my mortgage is tied up in this is everything that I have. And so I
Mhm.
said, I need you to share your story. I need you to trust me. And I know that it's hard to reach out and ask for help, but she
Yeah.
trusted me and allowed me to share that. And from that, we were able to have several radio stations, several news stations pick it up. The mayor found it. All of her city council people came in to offer support. The place was absolutely packed,
Mhm.
absolutely packed. She had the first few days, she was just in a frazzle, having to trying to bring in extra employees and trying to create new systems to handle the flow. And so that's the type of impact that I like to have. And that's why I'm so grateful for my audience and for my community, because they are truly there, not just to scroll and like and
Yes.
say things here and there, but to actually go out and to support folks, to show up for folks, to say, where do we need to lend a helping hand? Or even where can we just gather with each other and find joy and just enjoy a great event and build those connections and build that community that we need when we may be disconnected from our family and from others that we know. So yes, that's
Dr. Afia, we need you everywhere. Because is it not the Underground Railroad in terms of the comparison? Because it is in a certain way, through a certain lens, because when you think about not everybody is equipped to be the protester that's out in the street carrying a sign.
yeah.
Not everybody is geared towards that. So what you are describing is a different lane that one can walk in, that it's kind of like putting out the bat signal. Okay, one of us needs some help, and here we are. Oh my gosh, that's inspiring. It's
Thank you.
inspiring.
Thank you.
I did not. I want us next to focus, if we could, for the next few minutes, spirituality.
Mhm.
Okay. In terms of the spiritual unfolding of who you are. And even in the choice of your name, Dr. Afia, in terms of identity, how do you see yourself as a spiritual person?
Ooh. That is a good
Yeah, but
question.
I get deep every now and then.
Yes. For me, that's something that has definitely evolved and grown throughout my journey. I grew up in a very, very, very strong Christian household. So I had that foundation from an early age and, was just very well versed in biblical principles. As I grew older, I began, especially in my doctoral journey, I began learning more about our ancestors and our ancestral customs and
Yes.
learning about some of the ways in which we had been poisoned against them. And so for me, it only made sense that there is a reason why we have that lens and what do they not want me to know? And so I went on that journey and was just able to learn so much about the richness of our ancestors' spiritual practices and how aligned they are with a lot of, our own religious practices that we have today. And so being able to bring that into my journey and add that cultural aspect to, that religious aspect has really just deepened my sense of spirituality, has been able to help me to
Mhm.
find out who I am as a person and how
Mhm.
I want to relate to God and to the people that are on this earth and the people that I commune with every day.
And that responds to a question purposeful because Dr. Fia, we had similar backgrounds, and I find that we come from generations where sometimes God was taught in a limited way.
Mm,
God is preached in terms of rules and structure, and you have to fit this box.
mhm,
And for generations, we have contorted ourselves into a box when you actually connect to the divine is actually when you can be free. And
yeah.
in being free, that comes from the knowledge because what I can see going to the as many countries as you have, you can see the differences in how people express the divinity within themselves. And I just want people to be less afraid of where that journey, be open.
Yes. And even
So,
being open to that idea of divinity within ourselves, because we're sort of taught that God is this separate entity. But if we believe that God created us and created us in his image, how can we help but to have that spark of the divine in us? And being able to recognize that and being able to really have a liberated understanding of
yes.
who God is and, how to connect with her has been just such a I think a personally liberating experience for me as well, and has really allowed my path and my journey to blossom and to explore, expound in ways that I never even thought was possible.
Mhm. And you thought it would slip by me, but we're English teachers. I heard you say her.
I sure did. I sure
Come on,
did.
that's beliefs. We've been told all our lives God is a he. Come on, womanism.
I know, because I mean they'll quote that verse that says that God is, neither man nor woman but a spirit, but let you say the word her or she, and people
Yes.
are like, what now?
What now? What you
Excuse
doing?
me?
Well, how did you get free and liberated in being able to express God differently than what mainstream would say we should explain describe God? How did you get free from that?
One, by asking questions. I had a lot of questions, and being in academia helped me ask better questions. Secondly, by talking to people. One of the things that really shaped my experience was moving from my small city that I grew up in to Philadelphia. I engaged with so many different people who had such a diverse range of backgrounds and experiences and religious beliefs and just all of these different things, and being able to be in community with those folks and
Hmm.
hear their stories, also traveling around the world and seeing different ways of being and living, helped me to understand that there was so much more than the experience that I had had so far, and really helped me to understand that there are so many options to choose from, and that in order to choose the path that's best for you, you have to know what the options are. So that was certainly one. And then also just listening to God, listening to what others had to
Yeah,
say, listening to mentors, listening to folks that had different beliefs and opinions than my own, and then sitting with that and then coming to my own conclusions.
absolutely. And making your own choices and decisions. I like that idea of so much more, that
Mhm.
life is so much more than constraints that we learn in a educational system, for example. Life is so much more. Tell
Mhm.
us, how do people get in touch with you? How do they reach out, especially with these Bali and Ghana trips? I'm just like,
Yes. Well, you could definitely connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Afia Abroad. My name is spelled AFIA. I'm on Facebook at Christina Afia Harris. And then my website is a very direct way to reach me as well. And all my trip information is there, information for my services. And that's www.drafiaabroad. And yeah, that's how people can find me. And I welcome folks, reaching out and connecting with me.
absolutely, especially those businesses, because what you're doing in terms of highlighting them and their hard work, I think one can even say it's ministry.
Mhm.
Okay. So as for me, I am just so excited. I am on the cusp of my own project. I am working with the Dear Black Woman brand that was founded or created by Cami Red. I have to say, writing letters to our younger selves. There are about 16, 20 of us in this anthology. And oh my goodness, it has been an experience and a journey of its own in terms of going back to our inner child and reconnecting in a different way. So I'd like listeners to look out for information that's coming soon, Dear Black Woman, with co-authors, including myself. You've been listening to Ian Marie of About This Life. My guests today have been Dr. Afia Abroad, where we are changing our lives one day at a time.